Hello. Thought it was just me then.
Yeah, you're running the show.
I was thinking, what have I done? Okay, I've started recording.
Okay.
You can see my notice, can't you?
Can, yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Just start. Yeah. So we've got John Violet, Andy Farrell and Stephen Perry in the lobby. Do you want us to hang on a minute, Councillor Shaw, or just let them in?
Hi, sorry, my sound.
Oh. Is that me dropping out, or is that?
Can you hear me?
I can now, yeah. It was a bit patchy then.
And the sound wasn't working at all when I first joined, so I hope, well, you can hear me now anyway. Hopefully it'll. Yes, just let them in.
Okay.
I'm just gonna open the agenda because I've had some trouble with this machine today, so bear with me a second.
Okay.
Hi everyone. Hi Karen. Hi Christy.
Hello everyone, hi.
Afternoon. Gosh, it's cold.
Hi.
Hi Karen.
Hi.
Can I just check, is Nicola here, just in case, because I've had some issues with this machine today and the sound wasn't working and it keeps dropping out.
She's offered her apologies, Karen, just in an email to me. She said, I'm sorry I can't attend, I've got COVID. So literally just in the last 30 minutes, yeah.
Okay, well hopefully the connection holds up. If it doesn't, you might have to jump in, Rose.
No problem at all.
Sorry, could I just ask a question, Karen? Sharon, could you try to send a link for this meeting to Martin Preston? It's Stephen Perry.
Yeah, Martin Preston.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Thank you.
No problem. Expecting Sharon. Is Sharon on the call?
Sorry, I was on mute. I was trying to
sorry.
find this for Martin.
Well, we'll hang on for 1 minute there. Then we'll have to. Looks like him. There's Martin Guest, so I'm guessing that's him. Yeah.
Okay. Preston Posse, isn't it?
Okay, excellent. Right, good afternoon everybody and welcome to this meeting of the Integrated Sustainable Transport Task Force. I think we'll just do a quick introduction of the officers present, as well of course as introducing myself to you all, and I think I do know most of you, and Councillor Karen Shaw, and I have the portfolio for Environment, Transport and Highways. Can I go to you next, Rose?
Oh, you can, Karen. I was not fast enough off there. I'm Rose MacArthur. I'm the Director of Transport and Highways. Thanks. Lovely to see everybody.
Christy.
Christy Littler, Transport Manager, Cheshire West and Chester Council. And we do have one additional officer with us today, a new recruit. I was going to put under council update, but may as well introduce now, and I'll pass over to Jack, but he's literally here to soak it all up and to learn. It's day one, so to meet you
Don't
all.
scare him off, anybody. No scaring Jack off.
Hi, Jack. You're very welcome. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you. Hi all.
Okay. Right. So minutes for the previous meeting. Have we had this meeting? No. Okay. So can we accept them as a true and accurate record of the last meeting? Thank you. Okay. Item 3 is updates. Oh, Stephen, sorry.
So, sorry, I was just confirming agreement to the minutes. Sorry, that was all.
Okay. Item 3 is update on the AT Fest proposal, and that's with Vanessa Bond and Stephen Perry. You're both very welcome. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to ask Steve to turn the pages, if that's okay. Steve, we're going to go quickly through this, but it's a bit of a team effort, so we've got a page each. Can you throw it up, Steve, please? Okay. Yeah, our feedback. That's where we are today. Next page, please, Steve. Yeah, we are making progress. Some of this is probably already known, but for some of you may not be. The date is confirmed for Sunday, the 18th of June, with a probable start at 11 AM. The location will be the University car park near Castle Drive. Sorry, is it okay? The University car park near Castle Drive and the area around that, and also New Exchange Square, and probably some access to Story House. Those have been agreed, and people have agreed that we can use those spaces. It's important to emphasise that we are working in close collaboration, both in the preparation but also in the execution with Green Expo. Their event next year will be running on the Thursday, Friday and Saturday, running up to our event on the Sunday. So there may be some overlap, but there's certainly coordination. It's also important to note that the same day as our event is the Midsummer Watch Parade, which we assume will be sort of from 1:30 to 3:30 time. We see that's a benefit, but obviously we've got to work carefully with that team, and Ian in particular, to make sure that we don't interfere with each other. We collaborate and make it a success together, rather than getting other's feet or each other's bicycles. However, we are facing some fairly tough challenges and constraints. Resources continue to be a problem. Funding is a lot less than we'd expect. And in this meeting, I'd like to propose some links we want to make into the local authority team, and that will be referred to on each page as we go through. So it's over to Steve now for the next page, please.
Thanks, Stephen. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, as it says there, funding is still a major challenge. We put an application in for the members' budget. We canvassed most of the members around the Chester, Ellesmere Port, and even into the rural areas. We're hoping that we'd raise something in the region of £5,000. That would then cover us for initial project management, website, social media, some collateral to actually get the ball rolling for the event. We got less than half the amount we hoped for. I do want to say thank you to the members that did contribute, and a particular mention to Richard Beecham. I'm not sure if he's on the call because I can't see anyone while I'm looking at the screen, but he's been absolutely fantastic in pushing the project, prompting members to offer funding and that sort of thing. So big thank you to Richard. We've also put out funding applications to local charitable trusts such as Earl of Chester, Marjorie Body, Stephen Morgan, and a couple of others, in the hope that they can get us the seed funding, because if we can get this in prior to this space tab going live, that will then count as extra funding towards the 25% that we need. But as it says on there, we haven't actually had any responses from them as yet. We've had acknowledgement emails saying thank you, we'll look at this in our next meeting. The earliest of which I think is the 26th of October, some are running into November. We've had a little bit of a hiccup in that our event manager, who was going to be preparing all the technical side of the bid to go into Space 5, has pulled out. We had a really positive meeting with her on Friday, which means that we're going to get, I think, most of the stuff we need by middle of this week. So I'm going to take on the task of finishing that off, polishing it, putting it into the Space 5 application, then meeting with some of the key drivers of the project. That with myself, Stephen, Vanessa and Martin, just to make sure it's as much as we can possibly do before we actually submit the Space 5 application for assessment. Assuming that goes as planned, we will be approaching potential business sponsors. Part of that has to gel with the launch of the Space 5 funding bid and also the launch of our website. We do have a web domain. We also have a Twitter, a TikTok, an Instagram and a Facebook all set up and ready to go. Vanessa will speak more on that a little bit later. What we need at the moment is a bit of luck with some of the funding applications we've put in. That would be great. But if there is anybody from the local authority or anybody else on the call that has any ideas of other ways we could raise some initial funding just to keep that momentum going, that will be gratefully appreciated, whether that's on an official capacity in terms of transport or partners or council budgets, or whether it's just ideas for external engagement, things people we could speak to that have been helpful in the past when funding this sort of an event. Because we have to remember it is an event for Chester and the surrounding area. The idea is that this becomes an exemplar, a test bed for future events. We want this to be an annual event for Chester, but we also want it to be something that other cities across England will look at and think we can do that. I'm in communication on a fairly regular basis now with Active Travel England. They're keen to make it something that's sustainable. I know when I spoke to Danny Williams last week, he said he's coming to Chester shortly. So he's really keen for that, for it to be something that's not just a one-off event where a few people cycle into the city and go, oh yeah, this is great. We want it to be something permanent and sustainable. So any support we can get from the members or the people around the table today is gratefully appreciated. And that's it from me on the funding.
Thanks, Steve. Can I just come in there before we move on? So I didn't recall seeing any application from you. I've just done a search, and it was it sent out middle of August?
Yes,
I was actually on holiday then. So what I'm wondering is whether other members may have missed it, and that might explain why you've had a disappointing response. So my first question is, has it closed? Do you know?
As far as I know, Andrew hasn't closed it. I did ask him if it was worthwhile resending a reminder, and I did send a personal email to a few people that had said, oh yes, I'll support, that hadn't supported. Right. So I think I did actually send one directly to you, Councillor Shaw, so that might be in your inbox as well.
Right, okay. So I will obviously willing to support it. So what I will do after this meeting is I will forward it to the other members and remind them if it's still open, and hopefully we can get some progress there.
Oh,
that's
very
much appreciated. Thank you.
Steve, do you just want to comment on the poll side as well?
Yeah, I mean, not really very much to say other than it says there. We've mentioned we've lost our event manager. We're in discussion with other people. We've spoken to 3 or 4 already, so we've got some good options. And as I said, we're looking at the viability of the projects as a long term, something that's repeatable. The only thing I need to confirm, and I can probably do this offline with Jane, is how the council's liability insurance will cover the event. I know it's something that said it would be covered, but really I need to know to what extent and whether we need specific event insurance over and above what the council's insurance will cover.
Great, thanks very much, Steve. If you could just turn the page for Vanessa. So your turn.
I think we need the next slide, actually. Great, okay. Can everyone see that? So obviously, as Stephen and Steve have alluded to, we've been existing on some sort of quite restricted seed funding, but also a coalition of the willing. So this is the stage that we've got to in terms of the sort of the brand ID. So the two bottom buttons that you can see are intended for social media. And Steve Densley, in addition to his everyday talents, he's also a bit of a whiz with tech. So he's going to be sort of setting that, or he's already set that up for us. You'll see the logo at the top. Currently we're working on the copy for the website. So that will go live once the Space Hive funding launches as well, so we can try and get as much traction as possible. And also Steve Densley's put together a survey, monkey survey. So that will be going out and also encourage people to register on the website so that we can sort of communicate with them on an ongoing basis. But the survey that goes out initially is just really to sort of see and understand what the barriers are to both walking, cycling and wheeling in Chester at the moment. So really that is it from me, because until we get some more money in the pot, we can't actually plan to do anything on the market side other than social media and online.
Just want to comment on the next slide as well, Vanessa, just the brief point at the bottom.
In terms of comms, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is absolutely key. And, you know, I know Nicola's unwell today, but, you know, sort of having Marketing Cheshire on board as our sort of comms partner together with Quack's absolutely sort of essential to this. So I don't know who the most appropriate comms officer would be, but, you know, perhaps we can sort of have that discussion offline sometime soon.
Vanessa, can I just ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
So it was my understanding that Vicky Chowdhury had been linked with you. She's from the corporate comms team.
No.
Yeah, I passed all of her details on. Sorry to come in there, Karen. Vicky is actually transport and in corporate comms.
Yes,
Okay.
and Vicky did mention it to me, so there must have been a breakdown somewhere there, but I'm sure she's very good at this sort of thing. She'd be happy to work with you.
Great. Well, I'll make contact with her and we can see where we can take it. Great, thanks.
I've put her email address in the chat for you.
Great.
That's great, thank you. The next page, Steve, and over to Martin.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Martin Preston. For those who may not know me, I'm Secretary of the Sustainability Forum in Chester and working with the team on measurement and evaluation, and we're looking at data and what we can get out of this to assess how successful the event is and so on. So I guess we're looking at, in the end, can we say it's been a successful event? What have we learned from it in terms of the barriers to active travel and also the opportunities as well? So I'm working with Tammy Hunt at the university. Some of you may know Tammy. We've had one meeting. We're meeting again tomorrow to get our heads around what is it that we think we should be measuring and how do we measure it and so on. In terms of outcomes that we're looking to assess, how well attended was it? How enjoyable? Has it provided an economic stimulus to the city centre businesses we're looking for the festival to achieve? How well have we done in promoting the benefits of active travel? And then what level of commitment do we think we've gained to active travel amongst the residents of Chester? And then what are some of the barriers that we've identified? And Vanessa just mentioned the survey then, and Steve has put some thought into that. And we're going to be looking to identify some of these barriers and opportunities, I think, before the event, and also reflecting on them after the event. One thing that's, I guess I've been banging on about ever since I got involved in this is having an alignment to the council and the council's strategy and objectives around active travel. And we're very keen in the team to make sure that, you know, we learn from this and it helps support the direction of travel, pun intended, I guess. in terms of active travel. And so one thing we really need to do is myself and Tammy to sit down with probably one of Rose's team, and I know you're still waiting for team members to come on board, but to get together and to look at what's going to help us as a city move in that direction of getting more people, moving away from their car usage towards active travel, going in and out of Chester. Probably it.
Thanks, Martin. Did you want to take the question from Andy?
Sure, yeah.
Martin, Andy Farrell here at Chester Bid. It would be useful if you could have a chat with Carl Critchlow. He's the chief executive of the bid. In terms of your measurements and evaluation for economic trade impacts in the city centre for shop owners, operators, traders, because it'd be useful if we could use some of the data you come up with, but also have a discussion about how you actually manage the data, so it's kind of useful for both of us.
Yeah, that's terrific, Andy. Thanks very much. Would you be able to put the details in the chat so I can pick that up?
I haven't got. I can't see chat on my app,
Yeah.
but I'm sure someone will send you it.
Yeah, send them to me, Andy, otherwise, and I'll pass them on.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Thanks, Martin. Yeah, keep pushing on. On the push side, and this is the word we're using for encouragement. Push maybe a bit hard, but encouragement. We had a couple of very good meetings 10 days ago. Not from everybody that might invite. I just was trying to get the cross section geographically and in terms of interest groups, from ward councillors, parish councillors, partners, cycling and walking groups. And basically we shared with them the outline ideas. We talked about possible hubs, possible routes into Chester, and more importantly, to what extent could they help in the process of encouraging people to come in. So it's very much an early start, but it was a positive start. We had 2 meetings of about 10 to 12 people in each meeting. Also in parallel with a similar approach, I've been talking to Sarah Collins. I've also been talking to a couple of friendly schools or school environments that I have personal contacts. And I've shared with Sarah content that will go out hopefully in some sort of newsletter from her to the schools saying, if you're interested in this, please contact us. It's early days now. They probably think it's a long way off, but the hope is that we can get some interest from schools, primary and secondary, this side of Christmas, and then develop it beyond Christmas. And just to emphasise, we're not trying to convert everybody. Our focus will be on those willing to work with us rather than trying to spend time to convince those that have no interest. In terms of support, I would really value the opportunity to travel by bike. This is about cycling and walking, but bike has got more problems, should we say, in terms of access. I'd love to cycle the routes with an appropriate quack officer, so we see what it's like and indeed what minor changes we might make. I'm sort of partly motivated by the changes, but also partly motivated by the awareness of seeing what it would be like to travel in groups. And similarly, in that context, I'd really like to have an early meeting with the right people in highways to talk about what aspects we might change or improve, or indeed just the sort of safety aspect and things like marshalling or not marshalling and all sorts of things like that. So there's a cry for a bit of support there if somebody can help us. And on the last page, Steve, thank you. Yeah, so it's far from smooth sailing. The problems we've faced in the last couple of weeks with regard to event management has been a bit challenging, and also from the finance point of view, but getting that space I've bid in is critical. Appointing a new event manager is essential, and there's just a list there of things already mentioned where we'd like a bit of specific support from quack officers, and if those present can help us in that process, we'd really appreciate it. So any additional sources of funding, the insurance issues you mentioned, liaising with the communications team, and thanks for what's been suggested so far, monitoring evaluation, reviewing the routes, and having a bit of a chat with highways about what will and will not work. So that's it from the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me and see me? I am having terrible trouble with this machine today. The buttons are sticking, so I do apologise. Thanks, Stephen. Just a couple of points of clarification before I bring others in. You mentioned about the wanting to cycle routes with an officer, and you mentioned about meeting highways, and I'm just trying to understand what specifically is the ask around that.
Okay, I think there's two things there, Karen. They could be one and the same person. They could be different people, but in the discussion, the very fruitful discussion we had a couple of weeks ago, people were saying, well, why can't we do this? Can we do that? Can we think about using the bus lanes? Can we begin to suggest ways of, in a very simple way, improving what we've got to make the process of cycling into Chester more easy from the different radial points. And I'd just like to develop that in conversation with somebody from the Transport Highways team. And the second thing is that, you know, I don't want to go into too much detail, but if you could imagine that people from Limefields Park, Newton Primary School, and from Braken, for example, could end up somewhere near the Northgate Arena and wanting to cross the road somewhere near there into the city centre. We're thinking about whether we can have marshals. Do we call them marshals? We're allowed to have marshals. We obviously, you know, in terms of managing flows of people, we have to be very careful. We are not there to guide people. We're not there to, in any official sense, to marshal them. We're there to give them directions on how to get from A to B and help them in that process as best we can. But I need to understand what liabilities are for, you know, helping people in. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. Rose, I don't know if you want to come in there and any comment on. I mean, I'm just thinking about the second part of it, really, around the asset management approach that we take, and I think that's going to be in the council updates or somewhere on the agenda. But I don't know if you want to add anything at this point.
Yeah, I think there's a word of caution. Are you working with Ian Tordoff on this?
Yeah, yes, I haven't mentioned Ian because, you know, I don't, since I don't need to sort of get encouragement to speak to Ian. I'm still waiting for a response, but I'm hoping to talk to Ian specifically about the logistics integration of the Midsummer Watch Parade and our activities. That's really quite critical.
Yeah, that's what's flagged up for me.
Yeah, and I will be talking to him about these things in general, but you know, as I say, it's just to make sure the flows work as well as possible, because you know, if we're successful, there could be quite a large number of people coming in and crossing certain junctions, and we just want to help them in that process as effectively and without putting ourselves at liability, where we, as you know, lots of us, just not me.
Yeah, understood. Okay.
Does that make sense? I hope it does.
Yeah, it does. Thanks, Stephen, and thanks for all your work, but to both of you and to all the people that have been involved in pulling this together. It's hopefully going to be really good event. I've got a couple of hands up. John Beckett, first of all.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Karen. I just wanted to support what Stephen was saying about a ride through into Chester, picking up some of the key routes. I sense that a lot of the issues that residents and parish councils are concerned about aren't necessarily properly understood by the officers in CWAC. The South East Chester cycling plan was produced nearly 2 years ago. It's not been reviewed by CWAC, but it does actually pick up all of the deficiencies in that area and links with Chester. There are just some straightforward, simple things that could be done, and it would be good if somebody within CWAC, an officer, could be empowered to actually sort of understand all those issues and perhaps prioritise them. I don't think I need to say any more.
Okay, I mean, we'll take it away and discuss it. I'm sure that Sean Traynor came out with you, and I know he's no longer with the authority, but I do recall him doing such a thing. Is that not correct?
No,
Yeah.
he came out. He came out when we had a fatality, Karen, and we prepared a plan, and he was aware we were preparing a plan, which you've had a copy of for South East Chester. We're not aware it's been reviewed by CWAC at all, and I've not been out with any officers since. Okay, so actually
there has been. I'll just come in there. I think just to save us going down a path, there has been officers out, and there have been officers out with the Chester Cycling Campaign. I think, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, the gentleman with the French-sounding name emailed probably about 20 of us from across the council to do the.
Pierre Watery, yes.
Yeah, so there's been many occasions of councillors, of of officers going out and looking, and we've got network stewards, we've got people who are out on the network constantly. So I'd just be a little bit more cautious in saying what you think should happen against what's actually happening. And Stephen Perry, if I take offline with you, I can link you in with relevant highway officers, but I can assure you that this happens regularly and formally.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking for. Thanks, because in a sense, I'm sure your officers get all sorts of requests from all sorts of people, and some facilitation would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Can I bring Steve in? Steve Densley.
Thank you. It is just to really reiterate that the point we're making about the purpose for going into the various routes we're going to use. We acknowledge that there's little or possibly no money available for significant infrastructure change, but there may well be opportunities on some of these routes to take some very, very minor, very, very low cost interventions that can make a big difference. I had a really, really good chat with Laura Penn this morning from Ellesmere Port, and she was talking about the underpass that links Westminster to effectively the boat museum, and it's dark and doesn't feel safe and nobody wants to use it, but there's quite a nice green space in the middle of it. Just encouraging people to go there, maybe getting some local artists to paint murals on the inside of it, make it a bit more welcoming. Doesn't need to cost much money, but it's that little nudge that we need, that sort of culture change from no, I can't do that because it's dangerous, to actually no, that's quite nice, I'm going to use it. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve, not just with these walks with a member from Rose's department, but also with the Active Travel Festival as a whole. It's that nudging, that culture change. People make people think, yeah, there is somewhere I can actually use my bike and my wheelchair. There is a way I can walk into Chester. And that's basically the essence of what we're trying to do here. We're not saying, yeah, give us £1 billion to make everything LTM 120 compliant, because we're not going to get it. But if we can make those little changes, we might make a difference.
Thanks, Steve. Who's Laura Penn? Should I know who she is? Sorry.
She is it Cheshire Warrington Together? I can't remember the organisation. She's doing a lot around social prescribing, so she's going to be a really useful partner for the DFT funding, because I mean, we'll take this offline, but very briefly, there's already walking and cycling stuff going on connected with social prescribing around Ellesmere Port, which could be really useful for what we're trying to do with the residual feasibility study money. But as I say, we'll discuss that at a different forum.
Fantastic. But she's sort of a supporting kind of third sector, is she?
Yes, correct.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Thanks, Steve. Sorry, Karen, jumping in there.
No, that's fine. Thanks very much for those comments, and I think yeah, I think we have got lots of ambition, haven't we? And Rose, and we know there's work to be done, but we more work to be done. There'll always be lots of work to be done, but I think we are acutely aware about nudge behaviour and the important modes and out of the. I think watch this space as we move forward. If you want to comment at this juncture.
No, it's just that obviously this is a separate event, but the LC Whip really is that guidance document that we have to stick to. The local cycling walking plan that's sort of been revised and is updated. We just have to be really, really careful and clear that to Active Travel England, we are being massively measured and very, very focused with what we're suggesting we fund in alignment basically with that document. Doesn't stop us, Steve, doing that, like you say, nudge stuff and this small scale change that has a transformational effect. And that's really kind of the kind of dialogue we're having with the DFT at the moment, is that a small amount of money would make an absolutely enormous difference. I think, Karen, I don't know whether you want to pick this up as an AOB or at the end of it, but the connections with Active Travel England, Steve, and Vanessa, I've just sent you an email actually just asking for a bit of clarity, please, before Tuesday. I could do with just understanding who you've spoken to and what you spoke about, just so that I've got an informed position when I'm speaking to them.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's Vanessa for you to come. I think Karen's
oh, sorry, you
no,
it's my signal again. I'm so sorry.
No, it was just to add from what I was talking about earlier, that actually CRAG has now set up the Chester Local Group for Living Streets, Just conscious that obviously with sort of Stephen's massive contribution with Chester Cycling Campaign, just to give it a bit of balance, and obviously the Upton by Chester local group was set up in and around sort of the bus lane situation. So hopefully by being the local group for Living Streets, we're going to be able to sort of help. They will help us essentially to promote AT Fest as well, which should be good.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. John, do you want to, have you still got your hand up, or is it Legacy? You're on mute, John.
It's Legacy, Karen.
Oh,
Sorry
sorry.
about that.
Okay.
I'll lower it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so, well, thanks for everybody for your contributions, and thanks for the update. I will budget funding, and also did you request details as well for Andy? We'll follow that up. Okay, and also please going with Vicky. I'll have another chat with her over the communications, Vanessa. I'll drop you a line if you haven't got her email address already. Is it? Did you say you were going to put it in the chat, Rose?
Yeah, I'm having Teams issues as well, so I've just put it in an email to Vanessa instead.
Okay.
I can't
All
type
right.
at all in Teams at the moment. Sorry.
Thanks, both.
It's being daft today, isn't it? Okay, thank you. Can we move on then to item 4, which is the Chester TDM group, the traffic demand management update, and that's over to you, Rose.
I'm going to swiftly pass to Christy.
I suppose it's just a verbal update, isn't it? I think it's in terms of the wider group, Rose, with the Chester Zoo and the university and NHS.
Ah, that one. Sorry. There's so much happening at the moment. I thought it was the results of the Satan Camp 106 sort of like travel demand management stuff. Ah, okay, yeah. No, this is actually a really exciting update. So, what we decided to do was take the biggest employers in Chester. So we've got the university, we've got the hospital, we've got ourselves, and we've got the zoo. And what we've done is there's 2 of us from each of those agencies have met once. We've got another meeting coming up. And what we're trying to do is spotlight on issues to increase patronage, because we think probably the way out of a lot of our issues that we've got with the chronic underfunding from bus service provision, from the lack of patronage, which is causing issues everywhere really in terms of keeping bus routes on, as well as looking at this improvements for walking and cycling, making sure that it's backed by movements from people across Chester, across the Chester area, in the first instance in the Chester area, and we're hoping to actually engage outside, so that we're not just Chester centric again. So I know Tammy's on the call. I don't think Fiona is, and I'm not sure about if Jennifer is from the zoo. But like I said, we've met once already, and we're going to have a spotlight session on Park and Ride, and what we're going to do is work with all of those agencies to make sure that we can get patronage levels up by making the service fit for purpose. So that's what that was about, just to let people know that that's happening, and what we're trying to do is pilot that, because it's something that the DFT are very, very interested in. So the behaviour change side of things is something that they want to see exemplars on. So we're at very much sort of fledgling stage at the moment. It's not an official group, so to speak, but we're just working on how we can get people to travel differently in our own agencies.
Okay, thanks, Rose. That's really good. And I was how that was going as well. And I know Eunice is really keen, isn't she, to work with us to get, with the university students as well, getting them to change their behaviour as they move around the city. So that's really positive. Does anybody want to ask Rose any questions? Okay. All right, then over to you.
Tony's got his hand up, sorry.
Sorry,
yeah,
can you?
Yeah, it's just a quick question, Rose. I mean, tell me to cut this off now, but is there anything obvious that is big that is stopping people using buses? Because I have to say, when I was on a consultative call with folks looking at this, I did mention, I just see so many buses with so few people on them. I'm thinking, well, how are you getting around other than that? Is there anything obvious that's happened, or is it COVID related, or what?
It's a bit of a, I'll tell you what, I'll go with my top three, Tony.
Okay.
So COVID, so the government actually put out actual official comms saying don't travel on public transport, it's not safe. So they were official lines from the government, and they haven't yet come back and said, actually, no, public transport's perfectly safe, get back on it. But what a lot of travel is about habit. So a lot of people who heard that message didn't go on, found another way, never went back. Christy and the team have been looking at lots of ways to try to get concessionaires back, because there's a real fear within that sort of age group about travel and movement again. And so we did, we actually did something, we looked outside of the concessionaires are normally not allowed to travel after 9:30, but what we did was just try to attract them back. We kind of took that away to see if they would. And with things, it's like patronage is slowly coming back, but the other thing is fares. You know, we still don't have integrated ticketing. It's actually you pay per trip, so you might not be able to get connecting buses. You have to get off and get back on, and then you're paying twice in effect. And a lot of this has been, I mean, we're not the only county, we're not the only city, we're not the only borough. Cheshire East have got it worse, Warrington aren't much better. There's just been a huge sort of shift towards trying something else, which hasn't made them come back to bus. But we're going to start looking at park and ride and look at the hours of operation, you know, when nurses want to start shifts. But it's push and pull. I mean, you know, we can put on the best service possible, but if nobody wants to use it because they think particular things about it, or they've got, you know, a particular idea about it. So by working with those agencies, with the university, with the Countess Hospital, I mean, there's a statistic, I can't recall it again now, but it's something like multiple millions of outpatient visits every single year. And a lot of them are actually originating from within 2 miles around the hospital. You know, we're just not promoting what we've got, what route numbers, where they stop, where they pick up, all of that stuff. So we can provide the service, but we've got to get them to get the message out into their agencies, into their organisations. So that's what we're really trying to push. And so there's a ton of things I could come back on, Tony, but yeah, essentially.
I just out of pure interest, and I apologise to everyone for interrupting with such a sort of basic question, but it's just something that's been niggling me recently, and because gender item came up, I thought it might take 30 seconds to say it. Well, you've said it, so I'm educated now.
And in the chat, Tony, you'll see the other big issue as well, which is car parking. So unless you've got sort of restrained car parking and it's accordingly priced, then you basically don't disenchant people from, you know, using the easy option of the car for under a 2 mile journey, where the bus is really where it plays to its strengths. So you have to really rationalise and charge appropriately for parking within a city centre, and we've currently got a surplus on our charges, sort of haven't kept in line. So
okay. All right, thanks for that.
Thanks, Rose. Everybody knows what a controversial issue that is in Chester, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Rose. Also, and I know that everyone's aware to trial. Christy, I don't know if for you to update on that at this point.
Apologies, you broke up. You talked about the £2 fare. Sorry.
I'm going to have to drop out this meeting and try and come back in, because it's frustrating me that I can't be heard.
Okay.
Do you want to just update on ginger scooters?
I'll do it on my council update. I'm just conscious that John Beckett's got his hand up again. I don't know whether that's a new hand. Sorry.
Yeah, it is a new hand. Thanks, Christy. It's just a question really for you, Christy, and Rose. The LC whip, I don't understand fully. I wasn't involved in it, and what's happened since that was produced? There's been a cycling plan for South East Chester. There's been a plan for the centre of Christleton, and there's been the Bourton Corridor suggestion. How will you at some point, you know, update the LC whip? Because surely, you know, it's not a static document. As other proposals come forward, they'll be assessed and they'll be included in a revision. When's the next revision due of the LC whip?
We have just undertaken one because it was only quite a young document. We did it collaboratively with the cycling and walking groups in Cheshire West and Chester, and we the original LC whip that is. But as Rose says, it's a 10-year document for our investment, because we have to bid to government for our funding. Our delivery on the LC whip at the moment is still quite light. So we've got one scheme which we've just completed, which is in the LC whip, of many, many more that are sort of prioritised to short, medium and long-term interventions. So they're kind of the priority because they're set within the LC whip. Additional funding or developer funding that comes along can help to resolve some of those issues that you raised. So going back a few questions ago, you mentioned about the work that you've undertaken, and that has been fed into the Satan Camp traffic demand management piece of work that we had a presentation from Mott's on last meeting, I think it was. So that's been fed in. We're still waiting on the draft report for that. So I think chatting to Rose earlier, we were saying we'll bring that work back. So we'll have a discussion on that and we'll have the feedback to the group so that we'll be able to let you know what's been prioritised, what the evidence behind it is, and where we go with next steps really. So I think that's how we're going to take those aspects forward that aren't in the LC whip.
That's very helpful. Thanks, Christy.
Tony, is your hand
John.
still up? Sorry, or is that? I'll just quickly share my presentation then.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know if it's going to hold, but I'm here now. Sorry.
Okay.
Carry on.
Once I share my screen, I will see nothing. So either shout out or if Sharon, you can tell me if there's a hand up or anything, that would be great. So bear me 1 second. It's slower than I thought it was. There we go. Brilliant. Just put it in presentation mode in a minute because one of the texts on one of the slides is quite small. So can you all see that? The title slide is up hopefully for you all. Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd just kind of list what we were going to discuss this morning, so this afternoon, sorry. So we've got team news, which you've already announced. So Jack has started with us. So sitting in the background, mopping it all up and listening to the interesting conversations. So that was my big news, the biggest piece of news for a long time. And then I was just going to give you an update on the active travel social prescribing, our self-assessment with Active Travel England and the outcome of that, capability revenue funding that we've been indicatively allocated, quick update on the Helsby launch, quick update on BSIP, the Bus Service Improvement Plan, Raw Mobility, and then the e-scooter trial. So hopefully it won't be too long and we'll be kept to time. So so last time we met, we were Active Travel had just established. Active Travel England had just established. We were in the process of wider consultation with them, and they asked for a self-assessment, which we undertook. I'm sorry, I've gone on the wrong slide already. It's Active Travel social prescribing. After the last meeting, we were still awaiting the outcome of our bid. We did get through to the final round, but unfortunately we were unsuccessful. We got some quite limited feedback from them really, which I'm taking as a positive, that our bid wasn't too shy off the mark. And that was really about, we had some good working relationships in terms of the cycling as a mobility aid. They were really, really quite strong and pleased with our performance on that one. But they did say we could have improved through clearer articulation of the proposal, the role that infrastructure and governance of the bid within the bid document. I think, having spoken to them, the feedback was such that we'd put too many things in appendices, I think is generally it really. So I think we had all the information there, it just wasn't immediately in their faces to understand, so there's a lesson learned for us there. But in the meantime, we have had another meeting with our stakeholders, including Steve and others, to try and understand what we can do with the remainder of the funding. There's a consensus that we want to do something, because we were ordered 100k for the pilot. We have about 45k left, so we still want to do social prescribing, but we will have to spend it on active travel and in Ellesmere Port. So we're looking at the art of the possible there, working with Active Cheshire and with Healthbox as well in terms of the current social prescribing network in Ellesmere Port, and also internal colleagues such as Roger Golding in terms of walks, and with Sarah Collins for adult cycle training. So and also cognizant of the cost of living crisis and how we can potentially bring in some improvements on those aspects within the bid as well, so that people have access to jobs, employment, skills, etc. as well. So we're kind of trying to round it off in the best way that we can to make the most of that money. Those conversations are ongoing, and we will come back to you with a further update on that. What I actually wanted to say was about the local authority self-assessment. So as I said, we had conversations with Active Travel England. They asked us to self-assess so they could gauge what level we would reach between 0 and 4 in terms of our capability and ambition. So they gauged us on local leadership and support, the maturity of our local cycling walking infrastructure plan, the point that you raised, and also scheme delivery. And they awarded us a level on the results on the basis of this. Our self-assessment form was submitted, and we came out with a level 1, which we were really quite disappointed at, really, because we were expecting at least a level 2. But we have had further conversations with Active Travel England, and they were saying that we were a very strong 1, so we're 1+, and they were really impressed with our submission, so we were moving in the right direction. But as I mentioned earlier, the delivery on the LC whip is such that we've literally only delivered 1 scheme so far, so delivery scored us down a little bit on that one. But as I said, the majority of local authorities did fall into level 1, with some even falling into 0. So with level 1 there comes a capability and ambition revenue funding award, and it's indicative at this point in time. We have to submit for that as well. So we've been indicatively allocated £128,148. This just demonstrates where the majority of local authorities are. So the majority are in level 1, about 5 or 6 did get 0, which means they get no funding whatsoever. And then obviously it declines as you get to level 2 and 3, with no local authority reaching a level 4. Again, this was one of the things they looked at about the population that's covered in our LC whips, and the funding. So it's basically saying that 15% of the funding went to about 12.6 million of the population. 56% was covered 23.5 million people, and that's sort of a bar chart just to display what the balance of population and funding was within that breakdown from capability and funding, ambition funding.
Chrissy, can I just come in, just picking up that point that you were making about us contacting them again, because Chrissy sort of underestimates the real frustration that was felt internally at that one before we knew that others had been scored in a similar way. And so actually, just so you know, we brought the 3 of the most senior people in Active Travel England together and asked them, what about our submission? What do we have to do? It can't be a race to poverty, at the bottom where you're not doing well, so you get less funding. You're not doing well, so you get less funding. You can never get out of that loop as a non-devolved organisation. So just so you know, we did pretty much positively interrogate them. But what they do know about us is that we are ambitious and we do have vision, and all we need is that funding to kind of unlock that. So, Chrissy, I know you've spoken about it, but I just want to really impress upon people that we're not taking anything lying down now. We're fighting back. We're asking why. We want rationale. We want to understand exactly what we need to do differently. And they did, and they were honest with us, and they did say you're a very, very strong 1. We just couldn't get to the 2, but we got Lucy Lowe, who's actually supporting the DFT on the LC whip requirements to actually undertake that self-assessment for us. So, which they thought was a good move, and it was a brave move really as well from our part. So just to kind of reiterate that none of this is going without us really pushing now to find out what we've got to do to actually secure that funding. Sorry, Chrissy, I've stopped you mid-flow, but it was quite a positive meeting, wasn't it, by the end of it?
It was, and I think for me it also reiterated the importance of the forthcoming local transport plan to bring in the land use policies, making sure that our developers are aligned to LTM 120 as well, and things like the 20-mile-per-hour schemes that we're putting in, etc. So I think it was making sure that we're all aligned and we've got our ducks in a row, so they're telling one compelling story of exactly what we are doing for active travel as well. So I think, as Rose said, we did fight our corner, but we came out with a lot of pointers and tips as well in terms of how we bring it all together better to make sure they are showing the best version of ourselves as well. So yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Rose.
Christy, can I just come in there, because in the chat we've got a question from Martin, and it is about funding. It says, what can we learn from the local authorities rated at level 3, and are there any similar to Chester?
I think we need to speak to the likes of York and Cambridge, really. I think that's where we head next to find out some further information, if that's okay. We haven't done that yet, I haven't reached out, but yeah, definitely that is one to do.
Okay, and Vanessa saying, who is Lucy Lowe? We just clarified that.
A consultant who helped us from WSP Consultancy, and WSP also worked with DFT on the LC whip development as well. So
we've got a couple of hands up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Andy
We've got a couple of
Farrell?
hands up now.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's a bit disappointing actually if other historic cities did well and we didn't. There we are. Just when you usually get such a score from an agency like Active Travel, usually the first response is to produce an action plan to sort it out, of which the local transport plan would be a component, because there are other things, you know, like resourcing and all the rest of it. So is there plans to produce an action plan to sort this out?
There is, and I think we've got to sequence them all together, or not all together, but sequence them and deliver them. But this slide that I'm showing at the moment, it kind of boxes us into the capability building initiatives. So our action plan focuses on making sure that our LC whip is doing what we say it wants to, what we want it to, that we're investing in network design as part of the LC whip scheme planning and design, public engagement consultation, getting the right evidence and analysis, and bespoke training for local authorities and members. That's where we have to focus our potential allocation on. So within each of those, there's various actions that we need to undertake. Revising the LC whip was clearly one of those aspects. We need to make sure that we've got the pipeline of projects through the network design and the scheme planning, and that we're also, you know, chipping away at sort of behavioural change and the different messaging, because I think there's different messages for different audiences, isn't there? It might not just be about active travel, it could be about health, it could be about accessibility, it could be about tackling poverty and keeping costs down and things like that. So there's various different aspects that we need to undertake, but this slide really does feed into how we have submitted our funding ask to in terms of that 128k back to Active Travel England, sorry. I'm trying to make sure that we build up the capability so that we have the staff and the resources and the skills to make sure that that action plan is not only written but robust as well. So
yeah,
that's
I think
I'd
come in, you know, and I'm not, the question's fair, but I'm not sure the way it sort of asks, you know, what are we doing wrong? Actually, do you want road reallocation? So, you know, it's changing the ring road to be, you know, a cycle friendly route around. That's kind of the 3 and 4. That's what Cambridge, that's what Oxford, that's what York have got. That's what they've done. So it's not just what can we do more as officers, it's what full infrastructure changes can you make within the city. So, I mean, we can send you the scoring sheet.
That's not what I'm after, Rose. I'm after for an action plan to raise our score, not to come up with the proposals.
That's how you raise your score.
Well, yeah. So therefore, you need to look at. That
is how you raise your score. That's what they wanted to see.
Well, okay then. You know, then you know a plan would be useful. I hear what Kirsty says, and she's right. You know, it'd be good to see a plan, and because presumably one of the functions of this group is to monitor the delivery of that plan. Is it not?
I know Karen's still struggling with it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hit?
Yeah.
I haven't done anything. If it drops off again, you'll have to jump in. I didn't catch all of that, sorry. And action plan.
Yeah, an action plan which this group can gauge whether we're moving in the right direction in terms of raising our score, etc. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for the answers. I'm asking for an action plan.
Yeah, I think Rose, you are working on that, aren't you? Traveling with Rose.
Yeah, LTP is going to be our go-to document indexation, index linked. There's a mountain of stuff happening in the background on that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We've got other hands up. So Steve Pemberton.
Hi, Steve Pemberton, Cycle North Cheshire. It's one I think really for Christine Rose. A few months back, you'd commissioned WSP to review the LC whip. Either I've missed it, I'm not quite sure. Have we had feedback on what the outcome of that was and how it should be affecting our thinking?
WSP came to one of our Active Travel England's came to this group, sorry, and gave an update on where we were going. So I'm not sure if you're at that meeting, but they did come and give us an update. We've got some draft information back from them, but it was largely really to see what the art of the possible was given the new changes or the different guidelines in terms of LTM 120 and gear change. So working on the same principles that the co-creation of the LC whip delivered in the first place, but looking at those schemes and seeing if they were still deliverable to the new standards, right. and what, if anything, needed to change. So that hasn't come back to this group as yet because it's still kind of in draft form.
Okay.
But I'll see how we can arrange so that you can at least see it, really, if that's okay. I'll do that.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. And yeah, I was up to date with the intermediate report, but I was wondering whether I'd missed the final thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. That'd be really helpful, Christy, as well. Mike Garrett.
Yeah, hi there, everyone. It sounds a bit like being a crack record, but would it not be useful to demonstrate that the ideas we have, the network we have, corresponds to demand, and using that data from the that MOT survey of road traffic to demonstrate just how many trips there are, their origins and destinations, which are short and therefore attractive to active travel. Would that not give us a little bit of edge in terms of presentation?
That's a good point, and I'm glad you've raised it because I've skipped over my slides too quickly, sorry. But in terms of the submission to Active Travel England, we are asking for some funding to do a little bit of microsimulation models as well. So some of the data that's within the Chester Saturn model, and to look at particular junctions and to see what the impact of particular changes might be. Should we, look at the active travel lanes again, those kind of things as well. So we've put in some funding for microsimulation, evidence gathering as well. So that'll form part of that process as well.
So is that microsimulation of road traffic, of as it were, vehicle traffic, or demonstrating where the cycle paths should go?
I think it's in the ability to test once we think we know where we could do some cycle infrastructure to see what will happen to the traffic as well, so that we can understand the impact on the city as well, but through both a car lens and an active travel lens.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. We've got Stephen Perry.
Just a quick point. I think Mike's probably too polite to say this, but I think that from the experience we had of the bus lanes, we would question whether Saturn is the right model to use. I'm not an expert, but I just raised that as a question, but also to say that in Mike and in Andy Evans, we've got quite a lot of hands-on experience. So if we can help in that way, I know helping can sometimes get under people's feet, but if we can help, please ask us, because I think that's quite a critical point to develop.
Thank you. Just to say that the microsimulation model is a lower level model on more junctions and what have you, rather than Saturn, which is a wider geography as well. Although we will potentially use some of the data out of the Saturn model as well, but we'll have to collect new data in it. So take on board that point and absolutely accept the offer of help as well. So we'll see where we get to. And
thank you, Chris. Thanks, though.
Okay, thanks everyone. Chris.
Okay, so
I'll hands up.
It was just really to say on the Helsby scheme, which is our first LTM 120 or an LC whip scheme, The bulb planting is happening this week, so on Wednesday the council's contractor is going out planting with the schools and the parishes along the route, so that's the Frodsham Helsby. So I think there was a call if anybody was interested to help, that would be good. Other news is that we have procured through Sustrans an officer working with the school in Helsby, so working on active travel to and from the school, the feeder schools, the year 6-7 transition as well. So that's only just started in the last few weeks, but they are going to help us with the official launch of the infrastructure scheme, and which we're currently organising at the moment, and we will be in touch with some dates on that as well. We just need to make sure that we've got the availability of key dignitaries, etc., before we put a date forward. So that's my next thing to do on that. Bus service improvement plan. We are asked to refresh our bus service improvement plan and submit to the DFT. We just, as Rose was saying before, the lack of funding doesn't really stifle our ambition. We want to do better, and our enhanced partnership has definitely delivered some real positives to people. So we've been able to, as Rose said, offer free transport before 9:30 for concessionaires during the school holidays. So the question was asked about why people aren't travelling. We thought maybe if the buses are too crowded, if school children are on it, we'd give that flexibility. What we actually found was that people were just travelling at different times. It didn't necessarily attract people back in the same way, so something is still putting them off, and it could be that public health message. We have done Armed Forces Day, so we've given free transport for armed forces and their families, so that's through the enhanced partnership and on the park and ride. And we've also offered free travel to Afghan guests who are residing in the borough at the moment as well for the first 2 months. And again, you know, at a time when people aren't really travelling, the bus operators have put their hands in the pocket and offered that. So that's a real positive from the partnership. As Rose said, we are tackling these issues with DFT, so we've had a meeting with some senior officers from the bus team, and they actually said, you know, despite the fact that we didn't get funding, they did say that we're on track, we're on the right lines, that we're very, very strong, and we've got really of structure, not odd structure, and that, you know, we just need to, you know, round it off a little bit better potentially, but as I said, we are in the process of refreshing that at the moment, revisiting the targets and interventions and prioritising key actions. But one thing that I think relating to what Tony asked before was we don't have a bus service operator, a bus group for Cheshire West and Chester. So I think once we've got our enhanced partnership officer in post, for which we've got funding for 3 years to fill, I think one of the first things they will want to crack on with is to set up a bus user group for the borough. So anyone who wants to be involved in that, please do let us know, because any input will be gratefully received. And then just to say that we had a quick update on Rural Mobility Fund last time. So there was 2 parts of the project: the bus service procurement and the back office system. We have procured the bus service commission through the ODU process, and we will be operating 3 vehicles with low floor minibuses with accessible 2 wheelchairs and cycles as well, I think. Timetables are semi-flexible, but they do need to stop through depart from Frodsham at set times and serve rural hinterlands. So that has been procured. We've also got the back office support. That process has closed, but we've still got some questions through our ICT, our information technology team, of still asking clarification questions. So I'm not able to tell you who the supplier is just as yet, but we will let you know as soon as possible. If that's okay. And then just finally, our e-scooter trial. Last time I reported that DFT had asked us to continue the trial to the 31st of May 2024. So we've made an internal decision through officers to continue that, so we can continue to feed data back to the DFT. They wanted to be notified by the 31st of this month in order to issue a new vehicle special order licence for us. So again, as per last time, if anyone has any locations where they want to see e-scooters available for hire, please let us know and we can work with Ginger to try and put those in place. I think that's me. So that was just to show you the operating area for the e-scooter area. So we haven't changed anything in terms of the vehicles or the operating area. It's still as you see on the map, but we are under prescribed in terms of what the operating license allows us. We've got about 142 vehicles, I think it is, but yeah, we can introduce more, but we're introducing them incrementally so that we can monitor how effectively they are and whether there's any issues as a result of that. And now I think I'm done. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Christy.
Just a few stats. I'll just leave it on there, so I know time is precious.
Thanks very much indeed. That's really helpful. We've got Vanessa with a hand up. Vanessa.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Christy. It was just following up on the Active Travel England self-assessment. I don't know if anyone saw it prior to the meeting, but I sent a link through from Worcestershire Council, who actually got a big fat 0, but still sort of fully published details of the assessment document. And I noticed that somebody's already made a freedom of information request. So is there any way that you can share the self-assessment document?
Yeah, we can. We are encouraged to do so. We have received one FOI, and I haven't answered it as yet on the basis that I was checking with Active Travel England what sort of redactions need to take place. So they just want that. So they will let us publish our self-assessment. We need to take officers' names out, etc., or anything commercially sensitive. But equally, they do not want us to publish the notification. I know Worcester have, but they did not want us to publish the letter that we have received from Active Travel England, just our self-assessment. So we will do that and we'll make it available.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that's interesting. Any other questions for Christy on that? I mean, I just make a brief comment on the ginger scooters, if I may. I mean, I know that officers are working closely with police colleagues, and I think I mentioned this previously, but I did meet John Dwyer and went through all the details of the scooter trial just to try and so that they could better understand it and we could make sure that we were targeting any misuse and any issues that have come up, because we have had a few complaints about that. But Ginger are very good at tracking and monitoring all the data, and in fact in one or two occasions have actually helped the police solve crimes because the data uses a GPS to pinpoint where these machines are. So yay, e-bikes. Yeah, yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything about that now, Christy. Do you want to?
I suppose Jack will listen with interest, but I think one of the things we need to do is to speak to our colleagues about e-bikes and sort of see what the procurement routes are for that, what the interest is, maybe some soft market testing as well. So e-bikes and also cycle hire within the borough generally as well. So I think there's interest from parks and green spaces as well. So there's a number of different departments within the organisation that are keen to get this off the ground. So yeah, it is a priority.
And we are also exploring funding internally as well, I think is what I'll say. I think that's a fair comment. We've got some more hands up now. Steve Pemberton. Oh, that's gone. Vanessa?
Sorry, I switched the wrong switch. Christy, just a quick one. The bulb planting on Wednesday, there's been quite a lot of traffic on Facebook pages bemoaning the lack of and I did say it was going to be restored. Have we publicised that? I'm quite happy to take it on and do it within the area. Just need a time and a location if people are really that passionate.
Okay, I believe we have put it out on social media, but that might be incorrect. My colleague Vicky Chowdhury has been dealing with it with some highways colleagues, so I will get some information to you. But if it's easier, get in touch with me and I will pass it on to the right people.
I can contact Vicky direct and do it. It's fine. Thank you.
Steve, Vanessa?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. It was just, and I expect I'm going to say what Stephen Perry is going to say, but yeah, officially excited about e-bikes. That's great. And I think, you know, with all of this, and I know it's sort of banging on about it for a little while now, but if we can plug that gap between sort of car use and public transport, and something that came out of the various workshops that took place for AT Fest was that, particularly with younger people, they really, really want to use e-bikes because they might not necessarily, you know, have access to a car. And if we can get them into that habit of using e-bikes early doors, then that is fantastic. So can't wait, officially excited.
Stephen Perry?
Yeah, I will agree with what Vanessa said, but also something quite specific, Christy. As you can imagine, we've been full on with trying to sort out the Space Hive application and find a replacement event manager. But if you find yourself in conversation with Ginger in the next couple of months, would you please make them aware that we're very keen that they should be able to demonstrate some of these other options at AtFest next year. And if it's appropriate, myself or Steve will be very pleased to join one of those meetings. It's just that, as I say, taking the opportunity if you're talking to them to say, you know, we would like to demonstrate electric bikes, electric scooters, whether for rent or not at the current time. It would be useful to have them involved with our festival next year. Thank you.
Okay, that's really good. We can make that request, can't we, Ginger? Yeah, okay, thank you.
That's really good, Stephen.
Okay, any other comments, questions for Christy on her update? No, okay, so we're going to move on now to response to the proposed list of possible ISTT working groups and the One City Plan connectivity group. It's got Christy and Rose, so who wants to go?
Christy, shall I lead on the One City Plan stuff? Yeah, there's quite a few on here, and Andy, what group were you heading up, Andy Farrell?
I led at the making group.
Making, that was it. So there was making, connecting, being, I should know these off the top of my head. Can you remember what
Experiencing, visiting.
Oh, there we are, Vanessa. So there's 5 groups in total, and this is all to do with One City Plan. It's 45 actions by 2045. So the four groups are taking 10, and I think there was one with 5. So connecting is the theme that came up heavily while Good for Nothing were doing their, well, all of the themes came up heavily, but actually connecting was one that was drawn out as a main theme from the consultation that Good for Nothing did. I'm sure most of you are fully briefed and aware of what the One City Plan is, what it's trying to do, the energy behind it. We met in the town hall on the nights all merge. I think it was Wednesday night, wasn't it, last week? And Connecting was the group that was sort of taking on the transport questions, although Andy will quite rightfully say there was a lot of crossover into ours and his group on things like 15-minute neighbourhoods and others. So the task that we were set during the night was to look at what we've got, look at what was missing, look at what we'd want to add in, and then what would our top 3 priority ones. So Vanessa was on the table with me, Stephen Perry was on the table with me, Mike Garrett wasn't, but a colleague was. So there was a really good cross section of people. We've got people from the university, we've got people from the zoo. I think someone from the cathedral wants to be part of the group. Our accessibility officer, whose name has just escaped me, I've been working closely with him. The name will come back to me. So we've got quite a. That's it. Yeah, sorry, I don't know why that name escaped me there. And then we've also got Dave Reeves from our highway engineering team and our safety team, because obviously a critical person to have on. So we didn't think anything was necessarily missing, but what we did in our group was prioritise something called the 20-mile-an-hour city, which is a new thing. It wasn't actually a title. What we wanted to do was kind of raise that up as something that we were quite passionate about, that we thought that we would be able to deliver by 2045, hopefully earlier, obviously. But so 20-mile-an-hour city kind of was the mantle that we wanted to unite behind as our first priority. And then behind that, it was improving and promoting park and ride. And the third one was better wayfinding, journey planning, digital kind of information provision so that people can plan their journey effectively. It doesn't mean that the others aren't going to happen, but that was sort of from the group of people who were there on the night. That's what sort of bubbled up and rose up. Vanessa was probably kicking me under the table because I didn't mention parking at that point, but another main sort of conversation factor that came up was the abundance of parking within Chester, and what could we do to rationalise it slightly, or whatever was needed. There was no sort of solutions. There was just sort of things that we wanted to tackle. So parking was there as part of this. whole conversation piece. So the One City plan is now moving forward at pace. Charlie Seward, Gemma and others are really pushing it from the council. It's collaborative and collective and co-designing. It's not just for the council to do, but I just thought you'd be interested to hear that, you know, the number one was creating and enabling green sustainable transport, looking at the ring road as a barrier to movement, removing things like visitor rails and below ground crossings to bring them above ground, creating a much safer pedestrian environment, creating a safer cycling environment. So all the things that AT Fest are kind of pushing to do at the moment, wayfinding, route planning, using the station as a gateway, local, international, national, international connectivity. So tons of stuff that sort of leaked over into other people's areas, but very much a core that was centred around safe, equitable, sustainable movement around the city. And that's built entirely on what the consultation found out when it was being undertaken in terms of connectivity. I don't know whether Vanessa or others who were there want to add anything at that point. Stephen.
Sorry, Rose, I would say this, wouldn't I? I did drop you a note today. You might not have had a chance to see it, but just the request that we use the communication process that's going on around the One City plan, which is absolutely great. Can we use that to promote the Activity Travel Festival? Because I think it just so perfectly fits under B1. I mean, it's you know, I think the 20 mile an hour city is absolutely fantastic, but the fact we're actually working on something today which directly impacts promoting sustainable travel, I'd just like to get as much visibility as we can within the One City plan discussions. Thank you.
I don't know whether Andy, I mean, was that your, do you think there were other elements to the One City plan conversations that were happening that night that were central to this group?
Yeah. I mean, there was a discussion between my group and the connecting group about who owns various things or who leads on various things, and the 15-minute city was an interesting debate. I think it was the making group that was, you know, responsible for the kind of making of them, and then, you know, for the connecting group to be connecting them, and that was a kind of division of labour we kind of came up with. Easier said than done, I guess. But I guess it's as the groups form properly, because it's only early days for them, and you know, it's about the two groups working together to come up with those solutions to those shared issues, I think.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Rose.
One additional point that came from our group was the livability agenda and how that seemed to be not really considered as part of the whole thing. So I think that was taken away to have a think about.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Andy. Rose, do you want to come back on that?
No. I mean, it's just that I had Mike Hogg in my ear sort of saying, but it's got to be deliverable, which I fully, completely and 100% support. So the One City plan is, you know, it's an amazing initiative, and actually the general kind of consensus and the vision and the ambition and the energy is absolutely there. I think that the real devil will be in the detail about how all of that's stripped back and what those actions look like and what we're trying to get to and who actually does the work behind it. But I have to say that in all the conversations, there was nothing that we as a group, from, you know, the times that we've shared together and the meetings that we've had, there wasn't anything in there that this group, I don't think, couldn't put their name behind. And as Andy was just saying there's so much linked to tourism, to, you know, to sustainable tourism, to having EV charging at our park and ride to attract visitors from out of town to leave their car there and come in by bus, really promote that ridership on public transport. You know, there was lots of groups, because you circled group and everyone just sort of came in a block of sort of 10 people who were coming to mind saying, yeah, you could really support us doing this and you can really support us doing that. So I think that there was a consensus that connecting was the only one group that had that quite firm sort of, you know, what it had to deliver, but equally influence the ability of all of the other people to deliver theirs. So within the rank, you know, we'll lead on all of the things related to connecting, but I think we'll be influencing quite a lot of the other lines that came in under those other groups.
Okay, thanks, Rose. I'm just conscious of time because we've only got about 8 minutes left.
Karen.
So no, not at all. Just wanted to get the other items in. Anything else you want to say on item 6 then? Or we're going to discuss the working groups?
think it's just to say that Andy Rayner had been in touch with those that expressed an interest on Grosvenor Bridge and set a date for the 15th of November. So I think everyone who's expressed an interest has probably received that email, I think.
Okay. All right, thanks, Christy. Can we move on then, if there is no other questions, to John Violet? Did you have some questions, John?
Yes, the questions really relate to the end of Active Travel Forum, probably going back a couple of years, where various things were decided in Active Travel Forum, but not, or questions, shall we say, but never had the answers. And I'm sure they were all minuted at the time, and I just feel there's been some discontinuity. So just putting the picture, I'm the Cycling UK representative for the Cheshire West area. So the questions are very much orientated towards cycling. The first one is moving well away from Chester. There's an old disused railway line from Tattenhall to Whitchurch in Shropshire, and along that line there are some old railway bridges. Now, Highways England made a list of all the bridges they wanted to demolish, and it included 2 bridges along that route. So at Active Travel Forum, I would suggest that you might be inclined to object to the demolition of those bridges, looking ahead to a possible cycleway. I know the councillors in the south part of Cheshire are quite keen on it. Very long-term objective, but I wondered if you have made an objection to the demolition of those bridges. That's the first question.
Okay, thanks. I can't personally answer that. I don't know if any of the officers can.
I can't. I was just going to say, can we take it away? Because I know that
Yeah, I'm not expecting to know straight away.
Local plan, yeah.
But I just didn't want to lose it.
Yeah, John, it's a good time to be having this conversation because we're in discussions about the local plan at the moment. So we're just looking at what's in there, what's been preserved and stuff. So this is a really well-timed conversation. Absolutely.
As far as I know, they were the only 2 bridges that Highways England wanted to take down. They're in the Duckington area. I cycled over one on Friday, so I know that one's not gone yet anyway. Just the second question was about surfaces, road surfaces. Steve Pemberton made an excellent presentation just before the last Active Travel Forum, or the one before that. And it was really about how the road surfaces affect cycling. And in particular, one of the things we put a lot of emphasis on was the 1.5 metres from the curb where cyclists are present. And clearly, you know, the rules we know are 40 millimetres is the criteria for the depth of a pothole before it's attended to. But a 40 millimetres for a cyclist can cause a puncture, or it can knock somebody out of balance. The other thing that can happen, of course, is that we move into the carriageway away from that pothole, and that can be quite unexpected for any vehicles coming along behind us. So Sean Traynor suggested that the best way around this would be to put a weighting on the criteria for the which potholes are going to be done first. For instance, you know, an A road has a bigger priority over a B road over an unclassified road. But Sean felt we should have a weighting also for the 1.5 metre zone. So it was about 2 months ago now. Stephen Perry and myself, we met with the Highways maintenance group, and it turns out that has not been done. And the team said that cannot be done without the authority of a senior officer. So this is my appeal now for you to look at that, please.
Okay. I think, Rose, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a planned review of the asset maintenance strategy anyway to coincide with the TMC, so we can look at that, can't we? I think I understand the point you're making, John. Within the resources we have available, but there's innovation that can be, if there's innovation there.
Yeah, it's not necessarily costing any money, this, it's just putting a different emphasis, you know. Yeah. I think Steve's just wanting to chat, isn't he?
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, I think it goes a lot deeper than potholes, if you pardon the pun. It's badly degraded surfaces across lengths of road that are uncomfortable or unsafe for cyclists. And we did agree back in the 80 days that we would form a work group to work with the council and its officers on how we were going to develop this. And that is one of the things that just got kicked into the long grass. And in terms of work groups that I would like to see come out of ISTT, a structured study on how we make surfaces safer for cyclists is I would rank up there with LC whip as being a very, very key issue. The two biggest blockers for people being reluctant to cycle are segregation and surfaces, and I think those two should be sitting at the core of everything that we do as cyclists.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Any other comments or questions?
I've got another couple of questions. The next one is about the A51 project, which Christy reports on in detail. And essentially, Christy, you talk very much about the Balfour Beatty contract per se. But at the consultation was from the A55 right through to the Barrow Turning. And at that consultation, the Toucan crossing at Littleton was suggested. I was quite keen to have a restriction in the speed limit from 50 down to 40, but I believe that's not been allowed. And also the introduction of a couple of islands to aid the crossing of this very busy road, especially now it's at 50 mile an hour. One of the islands went in down at near Cotton Edmonds, but Sean Traynor explained that he couldn't put the other island in because it was outside of the work area for Balfour Beatty, and that would be done later by the term maintenance contractor. And that's at Wicker Lane, near at least to Guild Sutton. And it's a very important link, that it's for cyclists in particular, because people coming down the Greenway can then get across the Cheshire Cycleway. And at weekends, people are literally queuing to get across there. It's a very well-used crossing, but it's a very small island. As a refuge, it's quite frightening to be there with traffic on each side of you at 50 mile an hour. So, and during the last couple of years, while we've been waiting for this to happen, there has been a serious accident there. A cyclist has been airlifted to hospital. So I'm just really hoping that you might be able to put that island in and to enlarge it. You're not looking at big money here. It's I imagine the traffic management will probably cost as much as the actual work, but we're not looking at a big 5-figure sum here. So I hope we could just look at that. Then the final question. Going back to Active Travel Forum, we had a very good presentation by the Canal and River Trust, Rebecca Mason, and she was very keen for us to notify her of problems on the canal network and the towpaths. And I found over the last couple of years to be very responsive to any suggestions, whether it be vegetation clearance or small improvements. And I built up quite a nice relationship with her, really. But one of the jobs that is around, and it's a big one really, and I'm just highlighting it, is the brown route from Waverton into Chester along the canal towpath. Now, Sean Traynor did some work from the Greenfield Lock into near Oldie, and we put in a much wider path there, and it was done to a very good standard, and it's certainly had some very favourable comments since it was introduced. But the money ran out and we weren't able to do anything further towards Christleton and Waverton. It's about a couple of miles through to Waverton. But one of the big things that Rebecca Mason said in her presentation was that please notify her if you find that the surfacing is starting to degrade, such that the sub-base is actually punching through the wearing course. And this particular section was done by Manpower Services Commission Labour about 20 years ago. And it's wafer thin, the wearing course. It's just breaking through and it's deteriorating at quite a bad rate. there is some money coming from a development in Christleton. There's £10,000 allocated from them to improving the canal towpath. But to be honest, that's not an awful lot of money for what's needed. So Rebecca Mason said that, you know, it's one of these jobs which Cheshire West would have to be funding with themselves. So again, I didn't know who to talk to in Cheshire West about this, but it's a shame to see infrastructure like this deteriorating so much, because it will cost so much more once we start to lose that wearing course altogether. It's about, you know, halfpenny for tar now, really, you know, to get it right. So I'm just mentioning it to you. It is the brown route. It used to be very well used by cyclists. Now it's more used by dog walkers because of the condition of it.
John, that's okay. I was just going to say, if they're very specific issues like this one, probably best dealt with by coming directly to us out, because I have no idea where we're at with that, and I don't think we can provide answers now. It might be.
No, I'm not expecting. I don't know how to raise them, Karen, really, and because I'm aware that there are issues that we had. The 4 issues I've just raised were quite prominent at the Inactive Travel Forum, but they don't seem to be quite the same venue to get them through here.
Christy, what's John best doing in terms of, because these are specific issues, John, that like you say, they'd be best raised in a smaller environment, probably where you've got dedicated time with people who can give you responses as opposed to a large forum. So I'm just thinking, between Christy and myself, we could probably just start to try to find that space for you and find that time for you to talk to us.
Okay.
Okay, but there are, I appreciate what you're saying about that particular towpath, but yeah, you know, you do use the reported tools as well for things, but you know, you can use that as well. But I take on board what you said about that particular issue, and we'll get somebody to have a look at it, and I'm sure we can get it assessed and looked at.
I think there's a wider issue, obviously, from a budgetary perspective, John, that of course it would be better value for money to put halfpenny of tar to stop spending later on. But unfortunately, when your resources are spread so thinly across a whole borough of 371,000 people, then, you know, it doesn't always get the attention that you'd like it to get.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. John Beckett's got his hand up, and then and that'll be the last question, because we need to go on to any other business. John?
Yeah, quick one. Just in support of John Violet, actually, the towpath from Bourton through to Waverton, the Christleton piece is actually an important piece. It's in a hell of a state at the moment. It actually enables us to move children off the shared user path on the A41. Been 2 serious accidents, 1 life-changing for a child over the last 12 months. So I'm just trying to point out that there's another argument for doing it. It's to get something like 400,000 or 500,000 children a year off that road, which is dangerous. The other point I want to make to you and to the group as a whole, really, is that we're just about to get the result of the PM 2.5 consultation finished nationally. I'm pretty sure that what's going to happen then is that the guideline levels for NO2 and PM 2.5 are going to drop, and you're going to find that the A41 has got levels of nitrogen dioxide and PM 2.5 that are higher than the new levels, which will mean trying to get people off that piece of road. This, in my mind, links with John's thought about Tattenhall to Whitchurch. This is any route that is segregated and separate from a roadway, which has a pollution problem, is critical. We should keep it. I really do support the road surfaces point. I had 2 friends who recently had life-changing injuries by hitting potholes with their bikes within the 1.5 meters that you're talking about, John. And one of them has lost the sight in his eye completely. So I just wanted to say that John made some very good points there. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thanks both. Okay, I'm going to move on to any other business. We've got Mike Garrett wanting to come in. Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I'll be very quick, but it sort of does pick up on what John was just talking about there, about how we are structured and how we go forward. At an earlier meeting, I think it was the last meeting, we agreed working groups. And it seemed to me that that was a good way of engaging everyone and be able to work and collaborate between these forum meetings and that way make some progress. So I think we do need to be clear about objectives and how we as people can work and cooperate within working groups. And sort of to illustrate that, just to report on the freight study, and I'll repeat what I said a couple of weeks ago, that the One City plan doesn't seem to include the word freight. So we're proceeding with the freight study. We got a little bit of funding that we were able to organise internally from a pot that we had access to. And hello, Jack, because I understand you're going to be our interlocutor, so to speak, in that respect. Vanessa and Andy sort of kicked us off, if you like, and we're up and running. But maybe that could be a model for how working groups work, because I think in the active travel period, we were very clear that we needed officers to relate to. Otherwise, this is just hot air, and there's no mechanism for going forward. So that was it really, but I just would like to emphasize the point that we have to be organized, and working groups seem to be the way of doing it, because then you can do things between meetings. That was it.
Thank you, Mike. Rose, do you want to comment there? Yeah, I've got your hand up.
Yeah, no, freight is definitely now firmly where it should be, Mike. And it was actually picked up not by your colleague who attended did he tell you this? He wasn't the one to pick it up, but somebody else did. And so it's now written, it's in that document. And then but also, yeah, the working group stuff, absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And we're slowly trying to form that. But Jack starting is a huge bonus for us. We've got another lady, fingers crossed, starting, but I can't tempt fate at the moment because we're still having discussions, who will just start to make this a lot easier to be able to take those working groups away and work proactively and positively with you all for this co-production that we so want to get to.
Thanks, Rose. Thanks.
Karen, my hand was up just because there was another piece, a very short piece of business about the NTAC visit that I just wanted to alert people to.
Okay.
It's a National Transport Acceleration Council. It's the most senior people across DFT, and there's 10 of them. I've been trying to position us for this for a long time now. That's what Danny Williams will be part of. So that's why Vanessa and others, why it's so important for me to understand what conversations have been had. So we look joined up and that we get the best from this visit possible. In terms of people who are coming, it's an acceleration unit from the DFT. There's buses, there's active travel, there's union connectivity. So we've got the director of the acceleration unit, Danny Williams, Jessica Matthews, who's a director of local transport for the DFT, Gavin James, who's a DG of Levelling Up in the Union, Sharon Maddox, a deputy directors for local and regional transport analysis. We've got programme leads from the acceleration unit, head of strategy for Active Travel England, and then Jamal Sadiq, who's our deputy head of Northern Engagement. So you couldn't actually pull together a more senior group of relevant officers. I've spent a long time positioning for it and trying to get them here. So although this group, it sometimes feels that maybe you think that we're not following up or acting on stuff, but actually behind the scenes, we're trying to get us to the place we need to be nationally, strategically with the DFT, as 90% of our funding comes from there. So that's where a lot of focus and attention goes to. That's next Tuesday, and it's all day.
Thanks, Rose. That you're absolutely right. That is really important. And I think you know, the acceleration unit was the concept really when the officials don't. So having that audience with all the in the same place at the same time, I think is going to be hopefully a game changer, really, because they'll be able to see for themselves here and what our ambition is and the level of our ambition. So thanks for that. That was really helpful. Stephen?
Sorry, just one very quick comment. I'm terribly aware of the resource constraints that you face, Rose, and I'm also aware of the comments made by Mike and John. I just would like to suggest that there's so much happening at the moment. There's One City plans and there's other subgroups discussing all related and important things. I'd just like to suggest that maybe in the new year, those that are keen to do so should perhaps just have a an ICT meeting or whatever you might call it, where we just review what we're doing, how we do it, and how it delivers what we originally intended. As I say, in a reflective mode, because I think maybe the composition of this group and indeed the way we work could just sharpen up, and I think it's maybe we could just be a bit, when I say more efficient with our time, that's not to be insulting, but I just think we're all very busy, and perhaps we could simplify some of the interfaces and relationships, meant very positively, of course.
That's a good idea, and I think we had similar thoughts actually. I think it's we didn't want to we are mindful that the one city taking up a lot of people's time, so we didn't want to layer any more any more on top, and are working flat out, and so are we, to try and get everything delivered that we need to get delivered by the 31st of March. So that's the deadline that we're all working towards with funding and other things. Okay, any other questions, any other comments that people wish to raise? We do have another meeting scheduled on Wednesday the 6th to 7, and I think we agreed to so that people who were at work during the day would still be able to join, so hopefully that's appropriate for everybody and everybody can your time today, and take care, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.